Okay, hi everyone. What an awesome day today. I hope you are enjoying the conference as I do. And now we are entering a lightning talk for day one. My name is Budi and I will be the moderator for this session. Today we have 7 lightning talk speakers. Each will present for 5 minutes max. I'm not trying to be rude, but once a speaker reaches 5 minutes, I will replace him or her with the next speaker. And these are the speakers who are going to present today. Speaker number 1 will be Agus Prayudi. Speaker number 2 will be Raden Panji Maharjo. Speaker number 3 will be Arif Kodari. Speaker number 4 will be Hasan Faras Khan. Speaker number 5 will be Adam Widi Bagaskarta. Speaker number 6 will be Yosef Ardito Winatmoko. And the last speaker, speaker number 7, will be Miftah Muhammad. Before we start the session, I would like to announce that we are welcoming the audience to participate as a lightning talk speaker for day 2. For those who are interested, you can submit your lightning talk proposal. The registration form is pinned in the stage, so you can get the registration link over there. All right, are the speakers ready? You can wave your hand if you are ready to go, so I can see. All good? Okay, perfect. Okay, let's start with the speaker number 1, Agus Prayudi. Hang on. Wait. Okay.
Hello.
All right, speaker number 1, Agus Prayudi. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm very grateful today because this is my first lightning talks. So I would like to say thanks to all of Python Indonesia 2020 committee that give me an opportunity to present my topic with the title is Computer Vision Simulation in Artificial Environment with Python. Uh, in my lightning talks, I will deliver in Bahasa, so I hope you can enjoy if I deliver in Bahasa. Perkenalan singkat dari saya Agus Prayudi, dan saya fresh graduate dari PENS Politeknik Elektronika Negeri Surabaya. Jadi ada beberapa hal yang ingin saya bahas di sini, yaitu intro mengenai artificial environment itu sendiri, kemudian komponen yang dibutuhkan untuk membuat sebuah simulasi, kemudian bagaimana mensimulasikan computer vision project, dan yang terakhir ada video demo untuk memperjelas gambaran teman-teman bagaimana sebuah simulasi ini bekerja. What is artificial environment? Jadi artificial environment di sini adalah sebuah simulator. Nah, di sini saya mencontohkannya sebuah simulator robotika, yang mana kenapa saya menggunakan ini? Karena simulator robotika memiliki banyak sensor yang bisa kita gunakan. Salah satunya yaitu sensor kamera, yang mana pada sesi lightning talk saya akan saya gunakan untuk penerapan pada client side. Jadi adapun beberapa komponen yang akan kita butuhkan yaitu Coppelia Sim atau simulasi robotika tadi, kemudian Python untuk programming language-nya, karena di sini kita menggunakan Python Remote API untuk menjembatani antara server dan klien. Kemudian OpenCV untuk image processing dan TensorFlow untuk load model dan make a prediction. Oke, how it works. Jadi di sini saya membaginya menjadi 3 bagian. Yang pertama adalah Ship Detection Framework Scenario atau simulator itu sendiri. Kemudian yang kedua yaitu Ship Detection Framework, yaitu client side. Dan yang nggak kalah pentingnya ada Python Remote API, yang mana berguna untuk menghubungkan antara bagian yang sebelah kiri dan yang kanan. Yang kiri itu adalah server side atau simulator, dan yang kanan adalah client side. Nah, tanpa perlu berlama-lama, di sini ada saya memberikan contoh potongan coding saya di bagian client side, tapi teman-teman nggak perlu khawatir karena kita hanya perlu memahami beberapa bagian penting saja, yaitu yang pertama SimXstart untuk memulai sebuah koneksi antara server atau simulator dengan client side berdasarkan IP address-nya. Nah, apabila client ID variabelnya bernilai tidak sama dengan -1, maka itu berarti bahwasanya simulasi berhasil dilakukan atau koneksi sukses. Kemudian sim get object handle, di mana untuk menginisialisasi sensor apa yang ingin kita inisialisasi dalam program Python kita. Kemudian untuk mendapatkan data resolusi dan data gambar, kita bisa menggunakan fungsi simx get vision sensor image. Jadi dari sini nanti kita akan bisa mengolahnya dengan menggunakan OpenCV dan TensorFlow tadi untuk bisa mendeteksi objek yang kita inginkan. Nah, untuk lebih detailnya bisa teman-teman kunjungi di link berikut ini. Nah, saya menyediakan video demo untuk teman-teman agar lebih mudah memahami. Jadi ini adalah gambaran demonstrasi simulasi yang telah saya buat. Jadi yang di sebelah kiri itu adalah tampilan hasil atau client side kita, yang mana dia telah mendapatkan gambar atau data dari simulator yang telah kita buat. Seperti itu. Nah, di sini skenario yang saya buat adalah pendeteksian sebuah kapal ilegal fishing menggunakan pesawat. Kan tentu saja ini sangat sulit dilakukan, kayak gitu. Jadi sangat penting untuk menggunakan artificial environment sebagai pengganti simulasi, sebagai pengganti kondisi real. Nah, mungkin itu saja dari saya. Sekian. Jika ada pertanyaan bisa menghubungi saya. Terima kasih.
Alright, thank you. Perfect timing. Well done. So I would welcoming the second speaker, Raden Panji.
Okay, hello guys. First of all, I will deliver my talk using bahasa. Di sini saya akan membawakan topik identify our system defect using load test in Locus. Sebelumnya perkenalkan, nama saya Panji. Saya software engineer di Altera, perusahaan yang bergerak di bidang tagihan dan pembayaran digital. Saya juga bergabung di Data Science Indonesia Jawa Timur sebagai staf edukasi. Sebelum ke lewat tes, di sini ada ilustrasi sedikit, langsung ke bagian production mungkin ya. Jadi mungkin setelah kita bikin code atau fitur gitu dan udah masuk di production, tentu kita nggak ingin kalau misalkan ada demand yang meningkat atau traffic yang pesat, tiba-tiba sistem kita itu fall down kayak gitu. Meskipun mungkin sebelumnya kita udah melakukan kayak unit test, integration test, end-to-end test, cuman itu seperti kayak untuk mengetes fungsionalitas saja gitu. Jadi kayak peningkatan traffic itu nggak bisa kita cek. Nah, ke load test-nya itu sendiri. Sebenarnya apa sih load test itu? Load test itu kita intinya sih sebenarnya kita pengen buat sistem yang kita buat itu rusak. Jadi tapi rusaknya itu bukan di production gitu. Jadi sebelum dia rusak di production itu kita ingin ngerusaknya dulu mungkin di staging atau development kayak gitu. Ya mungkin fall down itu udah pasti ya, cuman kadang fall down-nya itu di luar ekspektasi kita kayak gitu, kayak baru volume yang nggak begitu banyak dia udah fall down kayak gitulah. Di sini tuh cara kerjanya kita itu kayak ngasih demand simulated user, itu kita kasih ke sistem kita, kalau dia pass kita tingkatin, terus kayak gitu, pass kita tingkatin, pokoknya sampai sistem kita itu fall down gitu. Terus Locus itu open source dari Python yang bisa digunakan untuk ngelakuin load test itu. Ini contoh scriptnya. Di dalamnya itu ada kelas dan kita butuh class parent HTTP user ini untuk ngelakuin client session-nya, butuh client session-nya kayak gitu. Di dalam ini ada metode-metode yang dikasih dekorator task ini, berarti metode ini yang menjalankan task-nya kayak gitu. Task ini tuh di random, dijalaninya secara random, dan angka 2 sama 3 ini kayak rasio terpilih, rasio terambilnya kayak gitu. Nah, task tadi itu kan dijalani secara random, mungkin kita pengen ngetes secara skenario, secara berurutan sekuensial kayak gitulah. Kita bisa gunain si kelas sequential task set ini. Kemudian kita tinggal define kayak gini, dia akan jalan berurutan kayak gitu. Kita tetap mendefinisikan menggunakan dekorator, tapi kita nggak butuh bobot di sini. Dan kita bikin instant baru di kelas di luar ini, kayak gini. Dan wait time ini sebenarnya waktu tunggu untuk suatu task itu jalanin service yang di tes itu. Kalau kita set dia constant 0, berarti kita memaksimalkan dari service itu jalan. Cara running load testnya yang pakai Locus tuh kayak gini. Ada 2 sih, bisa pakai web interface atau pakai CLI kayak gitu. Kalau pakai web interface tinggal di typing aja Locus, yang penting file Locus filenya itu satu tempat gitu sama directory project kita. Terus habis itu tinggal dibuka di browser ini. Kalau tanpa CLI itu kayak yang di bawah ini. Ini host ini aplikasi yang mau kita uji, flag U ini user, jumlah total simulated user yang mau diujikan, dan R ini hash rate itu jumlah user per detiknya yang diujikan kayak gitu. Ini contoh hasil tesnya kayak gitu. Jadi di sini kayak lengkap, mulai dari jumlah total request, kemudian ada yang fail kayak gitu, terus request per detiknya, ada nilai tengah, nilai atas di sini kayak gitu. Nah, habis kita ngetes tuh kan udah keluar hasil. Nah, kalau udah keluar hasil tuh apa kita udah merasa cukup dengan hasilnya? Udah percaya diri sistem kita ini mau kita deliver ke production. Nah, kalau misalkan iya, berarti hasil-hasil tes yang tadi itu bisa kita set sebagai batas atas, nilai-nilai batas atas dari sistem kita. Kalau misalkan enggak, berarti kita perlu nge-fix lagi beberapa hal gitu. Nah, yang bisa dilakukan, yang bisa di-fix tuh ada beberapa, yaitu pertama kita bisa ngemodifikasi code kita. Kayak misalkan kita memperbaiki cara caching kita, cara indexing ke DB kayak gitu. Atau kita bisa ngeganti dependensi yang kita gunakan, misalkan ORM atau ODM yang kita gunakan, atau
Alright,
modul
sorry
yang
Panji, time's up.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Okay, sorry. And we're gonna continue with the next speaker, Arif Kodari.
Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Arif, and in this session I'm going to talk about Python type hinting and why it should be your best friend. So, for those who are not familiar with type hinting, the definition is basically literally in the name. So you hint the type of the object that you are create. In Python, there is a typing module that was introduced in Python 3.5, and the main goal is to support static analysis. So in this talk, I'm going to share about how to use typing module and why it matters. The first reason is about readability, and the second one is to avoid buggy code. Let's go to the first one. Readability is about the readers, not the writers. So imagine that you are writing this function, weighted sum, with 2 parameters, data and weight. Your colleague might ask these following questions, like, what does this function do? What are the data and weight? What is the return value? Does it return list or a single value? If it returns a single value, is it integer or floating point? Can it be none? These questions are not really answered from reading from your code. So we need a better option. So one option or one solution is to use typing, something like this. So when you read this code, your colleague may understand that, oh, this function will calculate weighted sum of an array, and it takes 2 parameters. Data and weight are vector. What is vector? Vector is list of union of integer or float, or maybe list of integer or list of float. And then the function will return floating point number. So it's pretty clear. It helps your reader understand your code better. The next one is to avoid buggy code. So in this section, I will use MyPy. MyPy is a third-party library to do static analysis in Python. We will use the same example as the previous. For example, the same function, and we got this data and weight from external system or external function. And you may notice that there is a missing value in your data. If you run this code, you will get error something like this, like type error, unsupported operand type, non-type and float. This is basically if you multiply non-type with float. This kind of mistake can be avoided if you use typing and use static analysis using MyPy. Here is the solutions. So after you annotate your functions and you annotate your data input, you run MyPy, your file name.py, and then your MyPy will be complaining about the mismatch types. The MyPy detects mismatch type between the expected data types and the provided data type. This kind of mistakes, if you identify it early, it will save a lot of your debugging time later. And it gives you more confidence when you release your code. So it gives you a lot of benefit when you use or when you perform static analysis before you release your code. Okay, I said too, but there is a bonus. There is a Pydantic library, a library that lets you build a data validation model. In this example, I create a user model with 4 attributes, ID, name, age, and friends. When you create an instance of user with incompatible type, in this case, I supply friends with not a number type, Pydantic will complain about, hey, the friends attributes in element 2 value is not a valid integer. So it will give you this kind of warning at runtime, and it helps you to validate data from external, like I showed before. Okay, for the conclusion, type hinting helps your code readers to understand your code better. Remember that readability is about the readers. And it also helps you documenting your work. It helps you to catch bugs earlier, and it also helps you validate your data. Thank you, and happy typing.
All right, awesome. Perfect timing, Arif. Well done. So we're gonna move to the next speaker, Hassan Faraz Khan. The stage is yours, Hassan.
Okay, so I'm going to start. So hello everyone. So I'm here today to present this lightning talk on how to containerize your Python web applications using Docker, Django, and Flask, and some microservices. I know many developers are already familiar with this, but it's again a good practice to use containers with microservices. Everyone like good things. So short introduction about myself, and my name is Hassan Faraz Khan, and I'm a Bachelor of Science, Computer Science major student at Aligarh Muslim University. I mostly work on Python problem, machine learning, and you can find me on GitHub at Faraz Khan FK7. So let's move forward now. So some prerequisites to get your hand dirty for these talks are Docker and Docker Compose. Make sure you have both of these installed on your machine if you want to try it out. We'll be looking at Django and Flask. So Django is my personal favorite. It's open source and it really stands out when you're building complex web apps. And Flask is again a lightweight but really fast web framework. So let's start with Django first, and we'll see how we can Dockerize an existing Django project along with using a Postgres image. So this is a directory of one of my Django projects. As you can see, we'll have to create these 2 files. First, a Docker file, I've highlighted them, and a Docker compose.yml file. So a Docker file is a simple text file that contains the commands the user could call to assemble an image, and whereas Docker Compose defines the services that make up your app in Docker compose.yml, so they can like run together in an isolated environment. And the structure will be slightly different for different applications, but this is how we'll be creating a Docker file. In this particular case, we'll be using a Python free image. The next is an environment variable and called Python unbuffered, and we'll set this to 1, which remembers that it is true. And altogether, this statement means that Docker won't buffer the output from your application. The next is a working directory. We'll set this to app, and then we'll be copying the requirements.txt file to our app folders. We actually have to tell that we have to run this command pip install requirements.txt, and then we'll copy everything to our app folder. So this is how Docker file works. And similarly, we'll create a Docker compose.yml file. I'm using version 3 in this case, and we'll define these services like web, which will be running on port 8000 once after we have successfully executed this particular command, which is python manage.py run server. Next, we have to tell that it depends on a database. So our database is a Postgres image, which it will download from Docker Hub. After this, we can test our app by moving it into our work directory by cd, and then we can check validation of our Docker Compose file using Docker Compose config, and then we'll build application using these commands, the Docker Compose build and Docker up, and our container will be up and running on port 8000. So now we'll see how to do the same with Flask, but this time we'll use WSGI and Nginx. Like I said, different apps will be having different structure. So this is the basic app structure we'll be using in this particular case. Now we'll take a look at the USGI W configuration file. I won't go into deeper details of UWSGI and Nginx configuration, but we'll be using 1.py to listen port 8080, but we'll rather see how to use them with Python applications. So this is our basic Python Flask application, which will return hello from Flask if it's running locally. Otherwise, it will get this environment variable, and it will return that this time it's coming from a Docker container. And this is the Docker file. Again, we don't have to go through it again. And the next step is to create this Nginx configuration, which will be listening on port 80. And yeah, this is Docker file for Nginx. You can take a look at it later. And then this is the structure of Docker compose.yml file. Again, we'll be defining these web services like Flask and Nginx. And now we can build and test our application. And for this example, I've tested it on Docker Playground, which is really fast and amazing to learn all this stuff. This is what now you can see that it is running from Docker container. It's saying that hello from my Flask app running in a Docker container, which is running behind Nginx. So again, this is a final directory structure, and this was pretty much it. I know this was a bit too fast, but you can always take a look at these slides later because there's so much to go through when you're like Dockerizing your applications. And these are some references and links to GitHub repos which I actually used while making these slides. So thank you, everyone. This was very much it. I'm Hassan Prasman, and you can find my blogs on Medium at BadCypher. And thank you so much.
Awesome. Another perfect timing. Well done. So we're gonna move to the next speaker. Let me introduce Adam Widi Bagaskarta. The floor is yours, Adam.
Okay, thank you. So, hi everyone. So, here I'm going to talk about ETL using Pandas to GCP in second. My name is Adam. I work at Warung Pintar as a data engineer for almost 2 years now. So, okay, let's get started. So, okay, first, we don't talk about this Pandas. You can we know that this Pandas is the form is too funny if we want to talk about it. So we want to talk about another Pandas in Python especially. So yeah, this is our Pandas. This library will help us to we can use it to manipulate data and so on. But here's the complete definition from the Pandas. So Pandas is fast, powerful, flexible, and easy to use open source data analysis and manipulation tools built on top of the Python programming language. So if you are not in data team or you are not in data field area, maybe this is will give you a new perspective about how to handle data in Python. So yeah, we as a data team, we always use Pandas in daily basis. So yeah, this Pandas is very helpful. So okay, if we talk about ETL, so we have to start with step by step in ETL. So first is extract. So how to extract the data from another source, from various sources into Pandas. Actually, Pandas is quite powerful to open or extract the data from another resource, such as CSV, SQLite, or database, or maybe JSON, or even we can open Excel file in Pandas. So make sure your data is available to extract using Python, using Pandas, and make sure your data is quite visible to others. I mean, the data is looks like tabular data. So here's another example. Even we can open the data from MySQL or Postgres sometime. And here I am using my credentials, such as my credential in MySQL server. So I open it with SQL Alchemy, and the Pandas can open the SQL query directly to our connection. So the Pandas is very powerful here. Okay, so that's the extract. Now we move to transform. Using pandas is very quite different if we don't talk so much about the transformation. But here in pandas, there are some functions that we can use, such as aggregation. For example, you can group by your data, and maybe transformation. You can use your data to make more easy to do mathematical operation. And the last is about filtration. So you can filter your data, and you can choose your data which one should push into BigQuery or something else. So here I give you some example. So first, maybe we can use the data from country, from column country, and we can use it to upper the value. So we'll give the caps for all value, and maybe we can use another sample, such as a left strip in Python, in pandas, and we can typecasting the price. So maybe the price is in string type, and we can use typecasting into a floating point. And here's another transformation. Okay, that's the transformation. So the next, the last step is in ETL is load. So because I mentioned about the GCP, which is I load data into BigQuery. So I make the data warehouse here. So how to push the data into BigQuery in second? Here the line. So only using this line, we can push the data into BigQuery. So def.to gbq, and your project ID, your destination table, and your condition is the table is if exists. So you can replace, you can raise the error, or you can insert the data. So this is the easy way how to push your data into BigQuery and do your analysis there. But don't forget, we need to set up the Google Cloud SDK or credential to load into BigQuery. Why? Because this is the main feature. This is the key how we push the data into BigQuery. So please keep the credential safe, and make sure that your data is safe.
All right, your time is up. I need
Okay, thank you.
to switch another speakers. Sorry. Okay, I'm welcoming the sixth speaker, Yosef Ardito, to present your talk. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mas Budi, and hello, everyone. So after we talk about pandas, now we talk about cats, or that I wish. So today in this short 5 minutes, I want to just give one message to my fellow Pythonista who loves to develop machine learning or wants to try developing machine learning. And the message is try to deploy your model sooner. Why do I think about this message, and why do I think this message is important? Because as a data scientist, I look at my experience also based on my observation from the past. I saw that many data scientists stop evaluating their model when they have high performance on their holdout set. So they satisfied with high accuracy or high F1 score, whatever your metrics of choosing is. But we all know that holdout set is not a full good representation of the real world case. It's just the best that we can do from the data set that we have. And after weeks or months of developing your model, and then you decide to deploy it to your user, and you found out that your user use it in ways that you never imagined before. So this is happening before, and I think because we are from Python, and I know in Python, there's always a library for everything, right? So I start looking for a library to help me in this case, because I understand why data scientists don't want to share their model sooner, because we rather develop and optimize our model to achieve the highest accuracy as possible, to achieve that 100% accuracy, for example, rather than preparing an interface for our user to use, because most users are not programmers and they don't really understand the code. So we have to prepare an interface. And I found out there's this one library which really helps me. It's called Gradio. And in Gradio, literally with just less than 6 to 7 lines, I can get already a good interface. So I just need to provide it with 3 things: inference function, the input and output types of the model, and then I can get already user convenient for a user that are non-programmer like this. So in this example, it's just one of my project where I try to predict from study majors around the world what are their educational background. So I can get easily the text box as input and then the probabilities for the output. So here is quite easy to understand for our user. And what I really like as well from here is that you have feedback mechanism by default, and also the access is made public if you combine Gradio with Colab Notebook, which usually nowadays a lot of data scientists do. You can share this link, and then they will easily access this to get this interface as well, so they can start trying. Of course, Gradio doesn't only support text. You can also use image. You can also use audio or speeches, whatever you want. Even the basic tabular datasets, like this Titanic, very famous Titanic dataset, you can also use the out-of-the-box interface from Gradio. Even, to my surprise, you can also find dynamic input from Gradio, and you can use like this one from digit classification. Okay, so when I discovered Gradio, I was thinking, okay, why didn't I discover this sooner? Because it's such a brilliant idea to test directly to your user, to deploy it sooner, so then your user can give valuable feedback. They can put their weird values for input since the beginning, and then you can improve your model from there. And when I found out about Gradio, I want to make a statement that Gradio is just a tool. Because if you are such an avid Python programmer, maybe you think, okay, it's better to develop my own interface. Why not? You can use Flask, or you want more capability, then you can try to explore Django ML. But what's important is always try to deploy and let your user try your models sooner. So that's the key message that I want to deliver. So if you have any suggestion or you have any comments, please don't hesitate to mention me on Twitter. And thank you for listening.
All right, interesting talk and perfect timing. Well done. So we're gonna move to the last speaker for the day. Let me introduce Miftah Muhammad. Miftah, the stage is yours.
Hello, first of all, I will be giving this talk in Bahasa, and I'm very sorry for non-Bahasa speakers in the audience. Oke, talk hari ini judulnya Property Based Test menggunakan hipotesis. Namaku Miftah Muhammad, aku sekarang software engineer di Altera Indonesia. Kalau misalnya teman-teman ada suggestion, mau nanya gitu, atau mau ngajak diskusi, bisa langsung hubungin aja di link sosmed yang ada di slide. Seperti yang kita tahu, testing itu bukan hal yang gampang, dan juga membosankan ya. Kita selain kita harus maintain code-nya, kita harus maintain tesnya juga. Terus kita harus kita harus pastikan kita punya isolation yang benar gitu ya, coverage, belum lagi kayak tes yang kadang sukses, kadang enggak gitu ya, dan si developer kehabisan waktu, ya udahlah, dia bilang yang penting masuk production dulu aja gitu. Dan aku nggak merekomendasikan ini karena siapa yang bisa menjamin kalau code-nya bisa berjalan dengan benar di production gitu ya, kalau misalnya nggak ada tes. Nah, mungkin teman-teman di sini udah familiar dengan unit test di Python. Misalnya di sini kita punya contoh foo, string foo gitu ya. Terus kita panggil method upper, dan hasilnya adalah foo dengan letter uppercase semua gitu. Nah, terus kalau misalnya property based test, itu sebenarnya kita cuma spesifikasikan aja rentang data tertentu berdasarkan spesifikasi tertentu gitu ya. Dari contoh sebelumnya misalnya string, oke, dia ngambil string, terus kita lakukan sesuatu terhadap string tersebut, terus kita pastikan outputnya sudah sesuai dengan yang diharapkan. Nah, property itu property apa sih? Jadi sebenarnya property itu diambil dari properti matematika. Kayak contohnya kumulatif, asosiatif, dan distributif. Tapi karena aku developer, jadi ya awalnya agak takut juga, wah properti apa nih? Tapi sebenarnya nggak seserem itu gitu. Maksudnya kalau teman-teman bikin program atau bikin function lah gitu misalnya, pasti ada behavior yang diharapkan kan dari program yang teman-teman tulis. Misal contoh teman-teman bikin algoritma sorting misalnya, oke. hasilnya adalah list, jadi list ke n misalnya pasti akan lebih kecil daripada list ke n plus 1. Kita bisa bikin statement kayak gitu. Nah, hipotesis sendiri adalah library-nya Python buat nulis property based test. Dia terinspirasi dari QuickCheck. QuickCheck ini library-nya punya bahasa pemrograman Haskell. Bukan hal yang baru juga sebenarnya, udah dari 1999. Dan dia sangat gampang buat diintegrasikan dengan tesnya teman-teman. Dia juga support Django dan Python Scientific Stack gitu, mungkin kayak Pandas dan NumPy gitu ya. Nah, di sini ada contoh hipotesis. Yang beda di sini adalah ada dua hal yang harus ada di hipotesis. Yang pertama given. Given ini bikin tes teman-teman jadi menerima parameter. Parameternya itu adalah strategis. Jadi strategi ini adalah data apa yang mau teman-teman tes gitu. Jadi misalnya contohnya kayak integer, oke ya udah berarti teman-teman akan ngetes semua rentang data integer minus plus apapun gitu. Nah di sini yang perlu diperhatikan adalah kita nggak ada hardcode value gitu, kita nggak ada hardcode foo atau apa gitu. Kita ya udah kita ambil dari parameter, kita passing ke sesuatu yang sedang teman-teman tes, ya udah kita assert hasilnya adalah sesuai dengan yang diharapkan. Nah, di hipotesis kalau misalnya dia ada tes teman-teman yang gagal, dia akan mencoba mengecilkan dari sampai ke input yang paling kecil. Misalnya gini, kita ngetes sorting, oke. Tes kita itu gagalnya di data yang paling kecilnya apa? Dalam kasus ini misalnya 1 dan 0. Dan ini bisa direproduce berulang-ulang gitu sampai teman-teman bisa ngebenerin tesnya atau functionnya. Nah yang terakhir, ini semua cuma apa ya? Aku nggak bisa menjamin bahwa dengan menggunakan hipotesis bisa bikin teman-teman program teman-teman semua terhindar dari bug gitu. Dan yang pasti harapannya sih kalau misalnya pakai hipotesis bisa meningkatkan lah coverage tes teman-teman dan bikin program teman-teman jadi robust gitu. Itu aja. Thank you. Kalau mau tahu lebih lanjut bisa ke websitenya Hypothesis atau langsung aja ke dokumentasinya. Thank you.
Alright, thank you. Another perfect timing. Thank you, Mitva. Okay, what an awesome session, isn't it? I hope you enjoy the lightning talk session.